One, I hope you're well. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Metewanne, and today I'm going to be talking to you about non-technical roles in tech and neurodiversity. So let me just share my screen so you can see. Brilliant. So I hope you can all see that. As you probably have heard, there's a misconception that when working in tech, you have to be technically trained, and that's not necessarily true. So I'm going to talk some more about what some of those non-technical roles look like. And I'm also going to talk about neurodiversity, what it is and what it means. I myself am dyspraxic, and also have visual dyslexia. So I'm going to shed some light on what those conditions look like as well. So let's start with non-technical roles. Sorry if my eyes keep darting to the sides, just the monitor's there and I want to make sure I'm on the right side when I'm talking to you all. So I thought I'd start by sharing this piece of information with you at the top. A lot of people find it surprising, but in 2018, Glassdoor conducted a piece of research where they looked at 15 major tech companies, so likes of Intel, Amazon, Microsoft, and they found that 43% of these tech company jobs were non-technical. So if you do aspire to break into tech and you are not technically trained, there are a whole wealth of opportunities within the tech sphere. And I'm going to talk about 3 in more detail, but I've listed some down below. The 3 I'm going to talk in more detail are the Scrum Master position, product owner role, and also your insight analyst. So let's start with a Scrum Master. What is a Scrum Master? Now, they are essentially facilitators of what we call Scrum. Scrum itself is part of an agile framework group, and they are adaptive frameworks that a lot of companies and teams use to create solutions to complex problems. So I've got image down below that maps out the Scrum process. I'm going to talk about what that Scrum process looks like, and I'm also going to talk about where the Scrum Master fits in. So starting with your product backlog, that is basically a prioritized list of features from your most important features at the top and the least important at the bottom. And that's given by the product owner or your stakeholders. Now, the most important item is taken from the top and brought into what we call sprint planning. And this is a session facilitated by the Scrum Master with the Scrum team to break down that feature, the most important features, into bite-sized tasks. And those are to be committed to be completed in what we call a sprint, which is essentially just a time-boxed period that the Scrum team commits to. Now, when breaking down these features into bite-sized tasks, they're given estimation values by the Scrum team, and those are based either off how much effort is required or how much time is taken to complete those tasks. And then once you've broken those down, you then have to create what we call a sprint backlog. And that's basically a prioritized list of those tasks in your most essential items at the top to your nice to have tasks at the bottom. So if you do run into impediments, it basically ensures that by the end of your sprint, you have at least produced a working piece of product increment. So once you've got your sprint backlog in order, you then go into your sprint. And throughout your sprint, you have what we call daily Scrum sessions, again, hosted by the Scrum Master, where the Scrum team give almost like an update of what they're working on and also have the opportunity to flag any blockers or impediments. So for a developer, they typically talk about what they worked on the previous day, what they're planning on working on that day, and then also any blockers or impediments they have. So these daily quick sessions ensure that any problems that have been created or seen on the previous day are addressed as quickly as possible. So that happens daily, and then you reach the end of your sprint and you end up with a product increment. Now that is taken into what we call a sprint review, where your Scrum team present the current state of the product to your stakeholders or your product team. And it also gives your product team and stakeholders an opportunity to ask any questions that they have about the product or flag anything. So then the last event of your Scrum process is your retrospective. And these are more interactive sessions held by your Scrum Master. So they work with the Scrum team to look at how the sprint went. Whatever all the tasks set in planning completed, if not, why were the tasks not completed? Are there any that need to be taken over into the next sprint? Not only that, but Scrum Master also looks at the work processes and works with the team to make them as agile or as efficient as possible. And those are done by asking questions like, what worked well? What didn't work so well? And are there any actions that we can take into the next sprint that will make our work processes better? So as you can see, the arrow loops back round to sprint planning and you start the process again. So Scrum itself and a lot of agile frameworks are of a continuous delivery cadence. So overall, your Scrum Master is responsible for maintaining that Scrum process, liaising with the product owner, and also helping your Scrum team to stay productive and motivated. It's a very key role. So if you do have those qualities, you're a people person, you're organized, then this may be a role that you would want to consider. Now, the next role I'm going to talk about is a product owner. So the product owner is the driver of product vision. They develop the product goal. They have a number of responsibilities, some which we saw in the previous slide. So refining that backlog is a product owner's responsibility to make sure it's prioritized all the time and it's continuously updated. They track product development through checking in with your Scrum Master, attending those sprint review sessions, but also collecting customer feedback. So in all, ensuring that technical excellence is achieved through feature and defect management. They also create product visions for new projects and new products, and that's done through what we call discovery documents, where you assess your customer needs and you compare that with commercial and financial viability. That can be quite research heavy, and it also involves looking at stats and also liaising with different people in the business to get that sort of specialist information. So in all, they encompass and bridge the gap between product strategy and development, and they do that through driving growth and direction of the product. So I've got an image here that you can sort of see where all the different individuals feed into the product owner role. So you can see the product backlog going to the development, you get your product increment going to customers, customer feedback back to your product owner, and then also input from your stakeholders as well. So if you do like learning and picking up new things, you've got good communicational skills and you're organized and creative, product owner role may also be something that you want to consider. Now, the last role I'm going to talk about is your insight analyst role. And in one sentence, they translate data to information through analysis and then recommend to target areas of the business what those insights mean. So what that looks like is dealing with large volumes of data, you generate informational highlights, and then you send them out to those key areas of the business or those target areas of the business through regular reporting. And that can be daily, weekly, monthly, it just depends what you're working on. Another side of it is also updating dashboards. As we know, data is a lot easier to look at and understand when it's visualized, let's say in a graph, rather than just having the raw data. So as an insight analyst, it's your responsibility to make sure those dashboards are updated so that it's readily available for people who need it. Another side of being an insight analyst is thinking outside the box. So yes, you have your data coverage and you're analyzing the data that you get of a regular cadence, but where are you not collecting data from? And are there any key areas that the business should be collecting data to drive either product improvement or production or any general improvements in the business? So if you're a person who likes to think outside the box, you've got strong numerical skills, you like stats and you're a problem solver, then this role would be something that you would enjoy. So that encompasses all the non-technical roles that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I hope I've encouraged those who are not technically trained and still want to work in tech, that there are a whole host of opportunities that that are open to you. So with that, I'm going to move on to neurodiversity. So neurodiversity itself relates to a concept that certain developmental disorders are part of normal brain variations. So for neurodivergent individuals, we quite simply just have neurological functions that differ to neurotypical individuals. In terms of the UK, majority of the population is neurotypical, but it is estimated that 1 in 7 people are neurodivergent, and that works out to be just over 15% of the UK population, which is quite significant. I've got a diagram here that lists some of these neurodiverse conditions, but it's by no means an exhaustive list. It's just a few examples. And a lot of these conditions can either co-occur or overlap. So for individuals with ADHD, they will share some traits with those with dyspraxia. So why is neurodiversity important? Whilst we know there are areas that neurodivergents struggle or find difficult, there are also areas where we excel. And I feel like a lot of presentations focus on the difficulties. Today, I'm going to focus on the strengths. So what are some of these common strengths? I've listed them below. Attention to detail. We love getting involved in the nitty-gritty. We can enter deep focus zones. Some neurodivergents, unfortunately not myself, have the ability to absorb and retain facts really quickly. And because of that, they're able to develop high levels of expertise. We, of course, are naturally creative. Because our brains are wired differently, we follow a different path and naturally sort of think outside the box. So as you can see with these amazing strengths, neurodiversity is good for business and it's good for people. And that's why having a neurodiverse environment is so important. You get the best of everyone. So in a world where accessibility is becoming more important, companies have actually found that by making their products more accessible, they've also increased popularity amongst the entire population. So again, it's good for business. I'm going to move on to dyspraxia now. As I mentioned, I'm dyspraxic and I also have visual dyslexia, but I'm just going to focus on dyspraxia today as it is Dyspraxia Awareness Week, and it'd be a crime not to do so. So dyspraxia is also known as developmental coordination disorder. It can affect your motor skills, your coordination, your balance and your speech. And dyspraxia is caused by different areas of the brain talking to each other in different formats, but also is involved by using the piece of brain that you want to do for a job, sort of struggling. That process is different to a neurotypical individual. So talk through some of the difficulties, but what are the gifts? A lot of neurodivergents are really good at being detail oriented. They love problem solving, creative individuals, and they're really empathetic. But dyspraxia and other neurodivergent conditions do vary from person to person. So for me, personally, I struggle with spatial perception. Someone asked me to stand a meter away, it's not happening. I don't know where that is. I really struggle to focus in busy environments, be it physical or virtual. Sometimes I go into sensory overload and I sort of shut down. But also on my phone, for example, I'm not great at being in large group chats. So when the group chats pop in, I'm struggling to keep up with information that's or gossip that's being said. On my bad days, I really struggle to string sentences together in a chronological order. And from time to time, I can have really poor short-term memory. But what are the gifts that dyspraxia has given me? I love detail. I love getting bogged down and just sort of spending hours on something. I'm very creative. I love expressing myself artistically. And I also like trying new things. And because I love detail, I found that I'm really good at spotting trends or spotting patterns. Dyspraxics tend to be good at seeing when something doesn't fit in. So how have I found like the application process and also moving into the corporate space? As we know, diversity inclusion, everyone's heard about D&I, but it's becoming increasingly more important across industries, and companies are actually implementing methods that level the playing field for neurodivergence. So during my application process, and I had 2 cycles, one where I didn't disclose that I was dyspraxic and one where I did. And I found where I was honest and I disclosed it, a lot of companies have actually implemented adjustments to level the playing field for neurodivergence. So I found that I was able to get extra time in application processes. Some completely removed time constraints together. And I've even had some applications where I've been able to skip stages because they know their methods are not the best to test the knowledge and capabilities of neurodivergent individuals. I've also developed some coping mechanisms, and I hope people can these will help some people as well, fellow neurodivergents out there. But as I said, open communication, being honest about being dyspraxic, I found that once I was able to have conversations with people about what works best for me. So it made life easier for myself, but also then them as well. As communication, we were not able, we didn't get tangled up in me not processing things that they were saying and then getting frustrated about me not understanding. Also had to slow things down. It's very difficult to sort of be part of a neurotypical world where everything's really fast. And I often miss things if I'm trying to keep up with neurotypical people. So I found by slowing everything down because of my slow process speed, I was able to absorb a lot more information. I've also found that I've needed to switch off. As a neurodivergent, you're constantly having to change your work environment to suit the neurotypical world that we live in. And quite frankly, it can be exhausting. So I found it multiple times in the day, I've had to go on regular walks or take breaks just to reset myself. And it's okay to take that space and don't be afraid to do so, but also be able to communicate that with people around you saying, hey, I just need a moment, I'll be back. I just need to reset. So that marks the end of my presentation. I hope that gives encouragement to fellow neurodivergents out there that you should definitely be able to talk about and disclose to your employer or to those around you and your condition, and it helps them to communicate with you, but also you with them. And that also brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you for listening. If you do have any further questions, I think I'm going to take some questions now, but you can also feel free to add and connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay, how is it like to have dyspraxia in my workplace? Um, Generally, once I was open with people about it, it was a lot easier. So, for example, with my manager, I always say, "Can I have a quieter room for us to have conversations or other meetings?" Just so I know I'm not distracted by the environment around me. And that works really well. So, being open and honest. I found when I wasn't and I was trying to keep up with neurotypicals, I was getting frustrated with myself not being able to perform to their standard, and they're also getting frustrated with me. So, quite frankly, I found it okay. I've also had software being put in by my company on my laptop, being able to record and other sort of accessibility software. Um, so yeah, it's been okay so far, so good. How have you navigated your career whilst working as with neurotypicals? I have to be honest, as I said, open communication has helped, but there are times where neurotypicals sort of forget that your brain works differently. So you do have to repeat yourself a lot of the time. And that can be quite frustrating for those who have to constantly be reminded, but we live in a neurotypical world, so I wouldn't expect it to be any different. But it's also about raising awareness. Dyspraxia is one of the least researched neurodiverse conditions. So a lot of time when I tell people dyspraxic, they're like, "Oh, I don't know much about that. Tell me more." So educating a lot of people. I've got questions coming in. Let's see. I've answered that one. What equipment has helped you? Well, I was given like a voice recorder software. What's it called? Sono Sound, I think, by my company. And also being able to change screen colors, etc. Yellow, for some reason, works better for my brain. I found that when I did my psychological assessment, but also my mind's gone blank. There is also a scheme called Access to Work, sorry, it's just come back to me, where you can apply. I think it's a government funded scheme where you can apply if you do have a neurodiverse condition, and you will get like an accessibility coach. I had one in university and they were amazing. So they also have that in the workplace. And what's also great about that scheme is they have the opportunity to train your team around you as well. So not only you telling your team what works best for you, but you also have a professional who can train your team to work best with you and other neurodiverse conditions, neurodivergence as well. Okay. Did you always know you had dyspraxia? I find it difficult to share this kind of information with my employer. Completely relate. No, I didn't know. I had a really late diagnosis. I was diagnosed in university, but I always struggled with my education. Being a Black woman in, yeah, educated in South London, it's not really something that people look for. I was told that I needed lots of help going attending extra clinics, etc. And I really struggled in school to perform well in my exams. So it wasn't until I got to university where I thought to myself, you know what, I'm just going to get tested. And it's free at university as well. So that was a massive incentive. It can be quite costly as an adult. I've missed the question now, but just I think the second part was talking to about your employer. It really depends on your employer, and hopefully they've nurtured an environment where you feel safe to do so. But I would encourage you to have those open conversations because it does benefit you and the party you're communicating with as well. So, what qualification do you do, if done any, to become a product owner at Sky? Because it's non-technical, you can do anything. I've heard of people who've done classical civilization and are product owners, finance, business and finance. I myself did mechanical engineering, so it's completely out of field for a product owner. It's more about your experience in the business and if you have those individual skills. So if you're good at keeping on top of information, you're organized, etc. There are loads of courses as well that you can do that will help prep you for the role as well. But there's no specific degree that you need to study to be a product owner. Right. Is being a product owner similar to being an entrepreneur founder, but working within a company? Um, I personally have not been an entrepreneur or founder, so I don't know if I can answer that question, um, unfortunately. But in terms of ownership, you do own the product and you drive the direction of that. So maybe from that aspect, it is similar. Sorry, I can't answer that one as much as I would like to. Do you find that you need to take time off when you have flare-ups with this condition? Um, Not really, because I feel that's the norm for me, and flare-ups are okay. My world doesn't have to shut down when I have a flare-up because the neurotypical world can't keep up with it. That is, it's just something that I work through, and I think it's something that people should be encouraged to work through and embrace. Some days you're gonna have, conversations with people where they've got to repeat something 1,001 times so you understand it, and that's okay. So I don't typically take time off, or I haven't been in that situation. What course would you recommend, and did you enjoy it? Thanks. There is a website called, I think, productschool.com, and they've got really good courses for being a product owner and all product related roles as well. They've also got a lot of free resources, so I would recommend that. Um, the courses on their website. As that helped me get to grips with the role. And did I enjoy it? Yes, it's my current role at the moment. I am really enjoying it. It's nice to have the responsibility of something, but it also takes a lot of commitment and keeping on top of a lot of things. So what the developers are doing, what your stakeholders want, what's the best decisions for the business. And you also have to look at a lot of stats, and that's something that I personally enjoy to drive the direction of a product. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it at the moment. It's great.